wall marks a boundary between an area that was once considered royal grounds and a sanctuary where lawbreakers could gain refuge and absolution. Iconic wooden statues surround the Hale Okeawe Temple, which houses the remains of Hawaiian chiefs. Remains that are still thought by the native Hawaiians to emanate power, or mana, throughout the area.
David, I know you've got this theory about extraterrestrial contact and technology being spread throughout the Pacific, and you've got some really interesting tikis that I think kind of lend support to that theory.
Yeah, they look pretty interesting, and this one is pretty odd. He's standing here by the water.
When I first saw that tiki, first thought that came to my mind was, that's a grey extraterrestrial. And this is one of the kind of helpers, or the menehune, that the Hawaiian believe were created by the gods, or the Akua.
So is this the Akua right here, these guys with the big headdresses?
Exactly, yeah, those are the Akua. They had 4 principal Akua that were basically the creators of humanity and helped establish civilization on the planet.
1 year ago, when David was investigating the Marquesas Islands, located 2,300 miles south of Hawaii, he encountered similar tiki statues and discovered that they too are associated with ancient gods. But here in Honaunau, there appear to be 2 different types of beings depicted by the tiki.
So you're thinking these are 2 different extraterrestrial races?
Totally.
They have different kind of eyes too.
Totally, yeah. I mean, this to me looks like the Akua were extraterrestrial. Then they knew about genetic experimentation and they created these beings, menehune or grey aliens, to basically be servants. And you can see that from the lack of a headdress, their bald, which signifies they had low social status.
According to ancient Hawaiian stories, the menehune were human-like beings of short stature who were created by the Akua.
The Menehunes was little dwarf people, and they always came out in the evening because they were not so much human-like looking.
The Menehune are small, magical creatures that are thought sometimes to have been descendants of the earliest inhabitants that came before the Hawaiians from Polynesia. There are canals, waterways, gulfs, built, they say, by the Menehune. The work was done at night. They don't want to be seen, and they work incredibly quickly, so sometimes a whole retaining wall will have been built in a single night.
I visited all of the structures that supposedly were built by the Menehune. There's a Menehune fish pond. It's huge, has 900 feet of wall surrounding this one area, and then they would use that as a reservoir for fish. There's also called the Menehune Ditch. It was a way to channel fresh water. It is old in structure and before the Hawaiians.
Before the Hawaiians? Could this account of a pre-Hawaiian and pre-human water channel lend credence to the Hawaiian Genesis story? A story which also contains depictions of genetic engineering.
These were, I believe, extraterrestrial hybrids that had been created to help the Pleiadians and other races establish their civilizations or their genetic experiments on the Earth.
The Menehune are said to have built these unusual structures on Kauai. Archaeologists do not know who built them. The Hawaiians say, oh, these little people of the past, they're the ones that built them. These little people are somehow ancestors to the Hawaiians, who are actually very tall and large. The Polynesians are the largest race of people still on the planet. And yet, their own stories go back to these little people who are building stuff for them.
While many dismiss the Menehune as little more than mythological figures, a census from 200 years ago seems to provide historical documentation that they may have actually existed.
First census on Kauai took place in 1820. And that census said that of the 2,000 people that were counted, 65 of them were Menehune.
Confirming the account of the 1820 census, the Hawaiian Almanac in Annual of 1913 states that during the reign of Ka'umualii in the early 19th century, a census recorded 65 Menehune living in the small hamlet of La'au. The almanac reports an allied race of older extraction, 2.5 to 3 feet high, and concludes, as far as the little people of La'au, they were forgotten in the lapse of years.
Hawaiian Islands are so remote. This is one of the most remote places in the world. Do you think that Hawaii was perhaps some special extraterrestrial base?
I believe so. And it's interesting that this area is part of Kelotakua, which literally means pathway of the gods.
Pathway of the gods,
That could be
okay.
translated as doorway.
Are the teepees a record of ancient alien activity in Hawaii? If so, what were the islands used for? And where do these otherworldly visitors go? Perhaps further clues can be found by venturing inside one of the island's largest volcanoes. The Pacific Ocean, 20,000 BC. It is during this period that the surface of the Earth is frozen in the grip of a glacial period otherwise known as the Ice Age. It is a time when sea levels are dramatically lower, nearly 400 feet below where they are today. And these lower sea levels have created expansive land masses, which as the ice melts some 12,000 years ago, begin to disappear beneath the surface of the rising oceans. Is it possible that some of these land masses were home to lost civilizations? Civilizations for which we have no historical record, and which may have been far more advanced than we know.
We live on a very restless Earth that's constantly moving with earthquakes and tsunamis and volcanic activity. Continents rise and fall. Mountain ranges are torn apart. All kinds of civilizations could have come and gone on our planet. We know that there are over 200 known submerged cities in the Mediterranean. There's just so much on our planet that we have yet to find out.
Throughout history, a number of stories have been told about great civilizations that disappeared into the ocean thousands of years ago. The most famous of these, Atlantis, was written about by Plato in the 4th century BC, and is still believed by many to have truly existed. But there is another lost continent that is said to have existed at the same time as Atlantis, and looms large in Hawaiian traditions. Lemuria.
Lemuria was in the South Pacific and was thought to have connected the Hawaiian Islands and the other island systems out in that part of the planet. So it was a huge land bridge. And before, Lemuria was an extraordinary civilization before it sank into the sea. Story has it Hawaii is a surviving fragment of the enormous land mass.
Lemuria existed prior to the last great flood that occurred around 9600 BC, which was a catastrophe which led to the water levels all around the Earth rising as much as 400 feet.
According to legend, before the two lost continents were destroyed by a great flood, there was a war between Lemuria and Atlantis.
This was the destruction of the Lemurian civilization, and the Lemurians were driven into these underground cavern systems. The Hawaiian peoples really understand that they are the descendants of some great civilization, and that they have some kind of responsibility of preserving the culture of that.
Ancient astronaut theorist David Childress and Hawaiian history expert Dr. Michael Sala are on the Big Island to explore the underground caverns the Lemurians are said to have retreated to.
Now, there is a bit of spike in here on the Big Island.
These caverns are actually enormous lava tubes that exist throughout the volcanic island chain, and some locals believe they are still inhabited by the Lemurians.
huge.